It was the end of summer, and the sun was setting early over the small, quiet town of Hollow Creek. Emma, a 13-year-old girl, sat on the porch of her family's old cabin, staring at the dense forest that surrounded their property. Her parents had bought the cabin as a peaceful getaway, but to Emma, the woods always felt wrong, like something was watching, lurking just beyond the tree line. That evening, while her parents were out in town, she decided to explore the woods for the first time. The air felt heavier than usual, the sky a deep, bruised purple. Emma had always been curious about the stories she'd overheard from local kids. They whispered about something they called Slender Man, a tall, faceless figure in a black suit who wandered through the woods, stealing children away in the dead of night. She didn't believe the tales, but every time she looked out into those trees, an uneasy feeling crawled up her spine. With a flashlight in hand, she ventured into the woods, her feet crunching on the dry leaves. At first, everything seemed normal, the rustling of branches, the hoot of distant owls. But after a few minutes, the silence grew thick and unnatural. No wind, no birds, just stillness. Emma's breath hitched, but she pressed on, curiosity pushing her deeper into the dark forest. Suddenly she saw it, a white figure standing in the distance, half hidden behind the thick trunks of the trees. It was impossibly tall, much taller than any human, with arms that seemed too long for its body, dangling down in unnatural angles. It wore a black suit, but the most terrifying thing was its face. There wasn't one. Just smooth, pale skin like a blank canvas. Her heart raced. Emma wanted to turn back, to run, but her legs felt frozen. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching, or at least it seemed to. Could it see her without eyes? Suddenly, Emma remembered the stories. Don't look at it for too long. She tore her gaze away and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the thick roots underfoot. She had to leave now. As she turned to run, she heard a soft, almost whispering noise behind her, a sound like dry paper crinkling. Against her better judgment, she glanced back. The figure had moved, much closer than before. It was gliding, no footsteps, no rustling, just there coming toward her. Her body jolted into motion, sprinting through the dark, twisting trees. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps, and the beam of her flashlight bobbed wildly in the dark. But no matter how fast she ran, she could feel it, always just behind her, the presence of Slender Man closing in, like the darkness itself was alive and chasing her. The trees around her seemed to stretch taller, their branches reaching for her, as if the forest was on his side. The deeper she went, the more twisted and labyrinth-like the woods became. Her flashlight flickered and then died. Emma skidded to a stop in pitch-black darkness, her chest heaving, her heart pounding in her ears. She spun around, desperately trying to see, but the night had swallowed everything. She was trapped, alone, lost in the woods with it. The whispering grew louder, closer, and she felt something cold brush against her neck. Panic surged through her veins, and she stumbled forward, blindly reaching for anything to grab onto. But the forest floor beneath her feet seemed to shift, like the ground itself was pulling her down. She fell hard, her knees hitting the cold earth, and then she saw them, tiny pieces of paper scattered across the ground, scribbled in a child's messy handwriting with words. "Don't look, don't speak, or he'll take you." Emma's pulse quickened as the air around her seemed to thrum with an unnatural energy. She could sense him, standing right behind her, looming, waiting. Tears welled in her eyes. She squeezed them shut, willing herself to disappear, praying this was all just some awful nightmare. Then, a bony hand, cold as ice, rested on her shoulder. Her scream pierced the silent night, but there was no one to hear it. The next morning, when her parents returned to the cabin, Emma was nowhere to be found. The police combed the woods for days, but it was as if she had simply vanished. All they found was a crumpled piece of paper lying in the dirt near the tree line. Scrawled in the corner, in faint, trembling handwriting, was a single word, Slender. The townspeople spoke of it only in hushed tones after that. Another child, lost to the woods, taken by something they couldn't understand. And though the forest looked the same as always, quiet, peaceful, even serene, everyone knew that something terrible lingered there, something watching, waiting. Some say if you go into the woods at Hollow Creek, you can still hear Emma's cries in the distance, faint and far away, but always just out of reach.